Hey folks, this is Matt once again, and welcome back to another review. And this is of the 1999 film Sleepy Hollow. Now, hopefully this will work out today. I'll be doing two reviews for two Johnny Depp films. One for this film, and that the review before will be for a Johnny Depp film that came out a few years after this. Because From Hell was 2001 and this was 1999. And one of the reasons I did not like From Hell is because when I was watching it, I'm like, this reminds me a lot of this film, only I enjoy this film much more. Because I thought Tim Burton just had a great look to his movie. I mean, From Hell was a good looking film, but this was more of just taking the idea of Johnny Depp as an inspector or detective, however you want to call it. This takes place, I believe, in 1799, while From Hell, again, which I know is based on a graphic novel, but that took place in 18 something. So it's Johnny Depp playing sort of a little bit of an eccentric guy, and From Hell, Opium here, he has a backstory about his. Well, I mean, the more eccentric is that he's much more about sort of like an early version of CSI, about the clues, about forensics, sort of early form of forensics investigating that people don't believe in, but he does, and people think he's weird because of that. And they're both films that he falls in love with someone, and that is Heather Graham, and this is Christina Ricci, and they're searching for a killer, and that is Jack the Ripper, and here is the Headless Horseman. And they also have a backstory with Johnny Depp. He had a woman. I mean, in From Hell, he had a woman who was pregnant. Here, it's about his mother and what happened to her and her death. And even the finale of each film has a little action scene on a carriage. But this one, and From Hell, it really is a little one. This one is a very extended, fun, stunt-filled, back and forth between Johnny Depp and the Headless Horseman. Good stunt work, camera work. And From Hell, I just thought it was a boring film. This film, it did it before it, and once again, I know From Hell is based on a graphic novel, but movie-wise, this came out 2 years before that film, and this is just, it's 15 or so minutes shorter, and this is much more of a fun romp, and I know I've gone like 2-3 minutes to explain, but I haven't posted my review, but I'm sure there'll be some people who are like, well, still, why do you hate From Hell, and you like this? This, Tim Burton, I would say is one of his last great movies. I was not a fan of Dark Shadows. I'm not a fan of Alice in Wonderland. I honestly can't remember the other stuff he's done. Was it Willy Wonka? Well, I should say Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Yeah. I could watch that, to be honest. But as for the one that I really enjoyed, this was the last one. Because it wasn't Planet of the Apes or fucking Alice in Wonderland. But Johnny Depp plays Ichabod Crane. He's in, like I say, he's Inspector, 1799, dawn of a you know, new year, new 100 years, so to speak. And he is sent to Sleepy Hollow because people are getting killed, getting their heads cut off. And while he's there, he meets the townsfolk. He has some familiar faces. Jeffrey Jones, who's in Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and of course, later on infamous for liking titty porn. So fuck Jeffrey Jones. But he's in this. Casper Van Dien, who is not a great actor. He was in Starship Troopers, but his character does get killed. Gets cut in half by the Headless Horseman, so that's cool. Michael Goff, probably said his last name wrong, but he was Alfred in the Batman and Batman Returns. He's in this. Also, Christopher Walken. He's the sort of human form, and then when he gets his head back, we see him again of the Headless Horseman. It also stars Miranda Richardson, like I said, Christina Ricci. And actually, this was a film that Kevin Yagher was going to do. And I believe it was after Hellraiser 4 Bloodline, he was going to do this as a low-budget slasher movie. But the studio didn't like that. They didn't want that. They're like, no, we don't want just a low budget slasher film. We want it to be something more. And at the time, he was not only would he direct it, but he came up with the story and he worked on it with a new guy called Andrew Kevin Walker because he liked the spec strip that he saw, which was the script for which would become the movie Seven. So Kevin Yagher didn't get the directing job, but they did say, hey, you can still do the special effects, which he did. He did the makeup effects, and he did a great job with that. And Andrew Kevin Walker is the name on the screenplay. But then you have Tim Burton come in. And I thought it worked out fine. I mean, granted, it'd be interesting to see a slasher film version of Headless Horseman. I'm sure there's ones out there, but they're probably really shitty. But this, I know Johnny Depp has done action stuff, Pirates of the Caribbean, which I don't mind the first one. I'm on a few others, but this is one of the only ones I can truly say that he's playing a normal guy. I mean, he has a little bit of fucked up childhood, but overall normal. And he just sort of his most heroic role is Sleepy Hollow, in my opinion. He's not a big fighter, he's not a big gunsman, but he's doing the best that he can. Does a little bit of fighting with the Headless Horseman, a little bit of back and forth in the carriage chase sequence, and a little bit during the finale in the windmill, and it's burning up, and then it explodes. You have some good model work there. And it's definitely a gory film, definitely deserves the R rating. And I thought the violence and the effects by Kevin Yagher were very well done. There's a little bit of CG, but it's a good mix. It's a good mix of practical and CG, and a lot of practical stuff. Oh, I should mention another person who's in this, Martin Landau. He's the first guy to die. He gets his head cut off in a field, which I'm like, this is 1999, and it did it much better than the other film, Wild Wild West, which also had a guy getting his head cut off in a field. And this was a much better movie. I guess really this is the movie Tim Burton did when he didn't get Superman. Like he was going to do the Superman Lives, Superman Reborn, however you want to call it. But then that fell through. And I believe this was the next film he did with Sleepy Hollow. Which I'm glad that we got this. It is one of my favorite Tim Burton films. I enjoy Batman, Batman Returns, Beetlejuice, this one, Ed Wood. That'd be my top 5 Tim Burton movies. Pee-wee's Big Adventure, I liked okay. I haven't seen it forever, but I remember liking alright. There's one he did with Ewan McGregor, Big Fish. I don't think I've seen it. I'm trying to think of what else he's done, but that's all I can think of at the top of my head. Frankenweenie, I don't care for. But yeah, I mean, what's nice about the special effects is a lot of times when people get their heads cut off, it's done in one go. So it's like the guy's moving, and then boom, you see the head get cut off, and there's a good usage of practical, and it's very well done. And the fact that they don't cut, and he turns, and then boom, the head comes off, and it doesn't look like horrible, shitty CGI, in my opinion. Because, again, there's a mixture of Kevin Yagher's work. Danny Elfman did a solid job on the score. It fit the film very well. Johnny Depp's character gets into Sleepy Hollow, meets all the town, the citizens. That's another thing they kind of did in From Hell, was that not only do you have this killer, Headless Horseman Jack the Ripper, but then you had some people involved, that little bit of conspiracy type of thing. From Hell is the Freemasons. Here is this town, and there's a mystery, and there's this woman who's killed. Oh no, she was pregnant, and what's going on with that? And From Hell is this secret marriage. But I thought it was just done more interesting here. I got more involved with the mystery, which amounts to why the Headless Horseman came back, and someone has his head, and who is that, and why they're doing it. I just got more interested in that mystery than I did in From Hell, which, in my opinion, that movie can go to hell. And if this, honestly, I know that one was based on graphic novel. Sleepy Hollow is a perfect title, but if you didn't, From Hell would be a good title too, because they even mention about how, the Headless Horseman's come back from hell. But anyway, Johnny Depp gets into town, quickly meets Christina Ricci, who practices, I don't want to say magic, but she does these drawings, and some people think she's a witch, but really they're good luck charms, so to speak. And I bought their back and forth more than I did Johnny Depp and Heather Graham and From Hell. And the reason I keep comparing the two, A, because I'm reviewing them the same time, and B, because they're, for me, fairly similar to each other. But this one moved at a faster pace. It's much more of a gory, fun romp. And not only heads getting cut off, I know I'm all over the place, but I really enjoyed watching this again. But there's even a scene where there's a guy in a church, and the Headless Horseman throws this piece of fence that goes through the window and literally goes right through the guy. And then he gets pulled back through the window and dragged until the fence stops him, and then the Headless Horseman comes up and cuts his head off. So you did a lot of head cutting in this. A lot of heads get lopped off. So, I mean, they don't shortchange that with the Headless Horseman. It's like, hey, there's a Headless Horseman movie, but I want to see a lot of fucking people get their heads cut off, and you do. But Johnny Depp, this is honestly, for me, one of my favorite roles he's done, because, again, he's just a normal guy. I like the idea of a guy in 1799 trying to do forensics and trying to use that kind of aspect of detecting, but with limited resources. Like nowadays, we computers and stuff of that nature. Johnny Depp wouldn't have that, so these little gizmos that he has. And also you could tell Tim Burton had a fondness or was trying to go for the Hammer horror film vibe, whether it be the look of the town. Really great, I don't even want to call it cinematography, set design, really good looking sets. Again, that reminds you of whether it be a little bit of Universal, but I think they're going more for the Hammer horror films. For example, there's this tree of the dead that they find that sort of spirals up and looks like a little bit of a face on the top. And then a fun bit of gore scene, which there's not many times you have a tree that bleeds. I mean, there's The Guardian with William Friedkin, which I reviewed, and there's this one where Johnny Depp looks and there's blood coming from the tree, and he keeps chopping at the tree, and blood keeps spurting on his face. There's even a moment earlier where he's doing an autopsy, and a little bit of blood spurts on his glasses. Anytime I think of I always think of the original Fright Night, when William Ragsdale was watching the old Peter Vincent vampire killer movie, and in the movie, within the movie, it's Roddy McDowall hitting the stake into a vampire and blood keeps spurting in his face. It always reminds me of that. And also in Dracula Dead and Loving It with Stephen Bauer. So it's a nice sort of dark humor to it. And then he's hidden the tree, and you find out that's where the Headless Horseman is keeping his heads that he's been collecting, and the Headless Horseman and him and this horse will actually get out of the tree from there, and interesting effect. I thought the mystery with what's going on with the town was interesting enough to keep me engaged. Set design, not only the tree of the dead, but then the windmill sequence. There's actually some really good fight choreography. I mean, the Headless Horseman, the backstory is that Christopher Walken's character was a guy who had sharpened his teeth, has these crazy eyes. You can't really see it in this picture, but just really crazy. And during battle, he would just continue to chop people's heads off, and then it shows how he got killed. And so because he was a warrior, I mean, an evil one, but still a fighter, when he gets in fights, he did some fun choreography. He battles a father that then the Headless Horseman kills him, his wife, and the little kid. So it's pretty ballsy. And I know I'm jumping ahead, but I'll get right back to it. But this sequence where the Headless Horseman, chops the father's head off, and then sort of does a Jason Voorhees, the scene that was trying to Friday the 13th Part 7, The New Blood, actually, where Jason had the guy's head and throws it to someone's lap. Unfortunately, that was cut out because the MPA are assholes. But Headless Horseman is going for the wife figure and is carrying her husband's head right in his hands. So it does have that slasher film element to it as well, just on a Tim Burton style. In a way, this is the Tim Burton version of a slasher film. A Headless Horseman going around killing people one by one, cutting their heads off, and you know, that's slasher. If that's not, I don't know what is. But that kills the woman, and the kid is hiding underneath. And he looks up, and you hear the head roll, and then when it lands, the eyes are looking back on the kid. He's freaking out, but he's not. He has to be quiet. Then the Headless Horseman looks like he's going to leave, but then no, he comes back, drags the kid, and we don't see him kill the kid, which we didn't need to. But we get the idea that he's stuffing another head in the bag. So it's like, wow, they killed a little boy. And like I said before, the fact that there was this woman killed who was pregnant, I mean, it's kind of ballsy when you think about it. You don't have to think about it. It's pretty ballsy. And getting back to the fight choreography, that's around the scene where Casper Van Dien is fighting the Headless Horseman, and Johnny Depp has to get involved, so you have some decent choreography. The Headless Horseman has like an axe and a sword, and that's where he's able to cut Casper Van Dien in half into two pieces. And so you get a little bit of good fight choreography in that. And the action scene with the carriage where Headless Horseman was going after Johnny Depp, Christina Ricci, and this kid that's there sort of becomes Johnny Depp's assistant. And Headless Horseman is getting on the back of the carriage, and Johnny Depp is being dragged. They're both being dragged. And then Johnny Depp's getting on top. And then the Headless Horseman gets back on, almost hits him. And he's using his bag to block the shots of the sword. And then it's about ready to crash. There's a big log in the road, so Johnny Depp sort of cuts ties and then grabs the reins of the horses to get away. It's a nice shot of Johnny Depp's character being dragged, and sort of the point of view of behind the horses, seeing the Johnny Depp character rolling on the ground. Some good stunt work. And even when the Headless Horseman turns and then it flies, lands on the ground, and the carriage keeps flying and lands right on top of the Headless Horseman. Or even before, where Johnny Depp has a little bit of, not a fight, but, trying to get away from the Headless Horseman and the windmill. Then Johnny Depp actually makes the windmill on fire, and they get out of there, and the windmill explodes. Some good model work, like I said before. The film doesn't go too long without a kill, so it definitely has a decent enough body count, and again, a lot of heads roll. You see, you have a sequence where Johnny Depp and his assistant, the little boy, sees this witch, which you see her like cut, I think, a bat's head off and done practical effect. And one of the only little nitpicks is there's a scene where when she rises up, give him information, you have this really tacky looking CGI eyeballs that fly in the screen. It looks like something out of Roger Rabbit, to be honest. And then they go back. But that's like a little nitpick. That's like 1-2 seconds long. So little stuff like that. I was interested in Johnny Depp's backstory as a character, what happened to his mother. I know there's a nice guy on YouTube who said, oh, he had a problem because there were so many, oh, it's a dream. It's just a dream. I didn't really get what he's talking about, because the only time you get the dream is that when he's knocked out and is filling in the backstory for his, when he was a kid, his mom kind of did what Christina Ricci does, charms and things of that nature. And I believe it was Johnny Depp's father that murdered her by putting her in this, what do you call that thing, where it's like a torture device, where it's like it's kind of like a casket, but then there's spikes inside that closes in. And Johnny Depp, as a kid, sees his mom's dead body, go after, right, fall out of it right towards him, and he falls back and lands on this spiky chair that stabs into his hands, and that's why he has these scars of these indentations of his hand. So yeah, it's a pretty gory film. Good practical effects by Kevin Yagher. Moves at a fast pace. It's only an hour and 40-some minutes. The Headless Horseman, just a cool idea. I remember The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, the animated film. And they actually recreate a little bit of that, where Johnny Depp's being chased by a person with the pumpkin and throws the pumpkin in Johnny Depp's face. But that sequence is Casper Van Dien and them fucking with him. It's like the real Headless Horseman doesn't deal with pumpkins. He has an axe. And he'll cut your fucking head off for it. Let's see. But Andrew Kevin Walter, I thought, did a pretty decent job. I mean, he wrote 7. I think he did some rewrites. Maybe they were uncredited, but for the game. And I know a few other stuff, Andrew Kevin Walker. I believe he worked on 8mm with Nicolas Cage. I could be wrong. Like it says, based upon the story by Washington Irving, The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. It was cool to see that movie get sort of a bigger budget. And if they did this nowadays, a lot more of the film would be CGI. It would be kind of like Van Helsing type of stuff, where it'd be like there's CG in this, but I thought there was still a lot of real practical sets and maybe model work when the windmill blows up and practical gore. At least a good amount of it from Kevin Yagher, who he worked on Child's Play films. He worked on quite a few stuff, Kevin Yagher. So it's still a good-looking film that holds up to this day. I mean, the only thing that doesn't hold up is, like I said, when the witch, the CGI eyeball thing, it looks like something like Jim Carrey's The Mask would do. But yeah, Christina Ricci, she did fine in the flick. Supporting cast did fine. Johnny Depp, I liked his character. Both his forensic aspect, a little bit of backstory when he was a kid. And also, I say he's eccentric, but still fairly normal guy. I mean, he's a little bit iffy on blood because of what happened when he was a kid. But compared to the stuff he's done in the past 10 years, it's definitely more normal. But likable. And heroic. He's doing the best that he can. And it was nice to see Christopher Walken as the Headless Horseman. Definitely an interesting idea. Because Christopher Walken doesn't have any dialogue, but he definitely has the look. So in the flashbacks, and then when we see him at the end, he definitely has the look of a Headless Horseman type character. And even the Headless Horseman, that's a tough thing to have to put on this getup and then make it so that, well, you can't see, but you're riding a horse. So kudos to whoever worked on that stuff. But yeah, the sets and the look is definitely a Tim Burton looking film, which fits well with The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, fits well with the time period. Yeah, Johnny Depp does a good job. Good enough pace. Pretty decent body count. Definitely has his blood and gore in it. And just a fun romp, entertaining. A little bit of humor to it. And overall, I really don't have any problems with Sleepy Hollow. I really enjoyed it. It's one of my favorite Tim Burton movies. The DVD is just a commentary of Tim Burton, little featurette, some little interviews from that, a teaser, a trailer, and a photo gallery. So, I don't know if this film did well. I thought this film did well at the box office, but if you look at the numbers, it seems like maybe it broke even, if that. But I always assumed this was a box office hit, but I am not sure now. Either way, I'm not sure what to say about Sleepy Hollow. I don't want to repeat myself, because I do that all the time. I'm trying to cut that out. But yeah, really enjoy Sleepy Hollow. I think it's a very entertaining film. I think it's the best film to deal with the Horseman, Headless Horseman character. I'm sure there's been some direct-to-video horror flips, but for some reason I can't think of them now. I would assume. If not, I'd be surprised. But yeah, nowadays they kind of do these. They try to do these kind of movies, but they're very. I don't know, they're not fun, or is even more glorified CGI to the hilt that it's almost puke-inducing or fake-looking, and you can tell there's still a lot of practical, real, I don't want to say locations, but what they built with their hands, which makes it last more, in my opinion. Either way, that's my thoughts on Sleepy Hollow. Thanks for watching, take care, and we'll see you later. Bye-bye.